The massive alien fleet appeared in Earth's orbit without warning, their ships darkening the skies above major cities worldwide. People looked up in fear as the shadows of giant spacecraft passed overhead. In New York, Tokyo, London, and Beijing, normal life stopped. Cars halted in streets. Workers left their offices to stare at the sky. Children pointed upward, as teachers tried to keep them calm. The Galactic Hegemony, a coalition of advanced species from across the stars, wasted no time with their demands. Every phone, computer, television, and radio on Earth suddenly carried the same message. The aliens spoke in perfect human languages, their voices cold and mechanical. People of Earth, we are the Galactic Hegemony. Your planet is now under our control. You have 72 hours to surrender all governmental authority to us. Resistance is futile. Your technology is primitive. Your weapons are useless. Submit, and you may live as our subjects. Refuse, and face extinction. High Commander Tahoe stood on the bridge of his massive flagship, looking down at the blue planet through a view screen. He was tall and imposing, with pale blue skin and eyes that seemed to glow with inner light. His uniform bore countless medals and honors from conquered worlds. Tahoe had led 17 successful invasions for the hegemony. Earth would be his 18th victory. Status report, he demanded. His second officer, Dong-e, bowed slightly. Message delivered to all Earth communication systems. Commander, we're monitoring their responses. They seem to be in disarray. Tahoe smiled coldly. As expected, these humans have no chance against our technology. Their surrender is inevitable. Some of our intelligence suggests humans are unusually stubborn, sir, Dong-e said carefully. Tahoe waved a dismissive hand. All species say that before they needle, prepare the demonstration weapon. If they need convincing, we'll destroy one of their smaller cities. On Earth, panic spread quickly. Streets filled with people rushing to stores for supplies. Military bases worldwide went on high alert. Government leaders tried to calm their citizens while secretly preparing for the worst. At the United Nations in New York, representatives from all nations frantically convened an emergency session. The Security Council chamber was chaos. Diplomats shouted over each other. Some demanded immediate military response. Others insisted surrender was the only option to save lives. Secretary General Hannah called for order, banging her gavel repeatedly. We need facts before decisions. Where is Dr. Park? Dr. Ju Park rushed into the chamber minutes later. She was Earth's foremost senolinguist, having pioneered theoretical work on how alien languages might function. Until today, her work had been purely academic. Now she was humanity's most valuable expert. Security guards escorted her to the podium. Dr. Park looked exhausted, her hair messy from hours of non-stop work. She'd been analyzing the alien message since it first came through. The translation is perfect, she explained, her voice steady despite her fear. Too perfect. They'd been studying us for some time. Their message was delivered simultaneously in 147 human languages. What do they want? Asked the French representative. Complete surrender, Dr. Park replied. They've given us 72 hours to submit to their authority. After that, they claim they'll begin planetary bombardment. Can we negotiate? Asked another diplomat. Dr. Park shook her head. They've opened no channels for dialogue, only one for acceptance of terms. The room fell silent. 72 hours to decide the fate of humanity. What do we know about their weapons capabilities? Asked the representative from Kenya. General Jumsu of the United Nations Military Advisory Committee stood up. From what we can observe, their technology is far beyond ours. They have at least 300 major vessels and possibly thousands of smaller craft. Our nuclear weapons might damage individual ships, but we cannot stop their fleet, and using nuclear weapons would risk devastating our own planet. So we surrender, the British representative asked, voice breaking. Nobody answered. The weight of impossible choices hung in the air. Meanwhile, 12 kilometers beneath the Pacific Ocean floor, Admiral Minho stood in a facility unknown to most of humanity. The Deepwater Complex was mankind's greatest secret, a research and development center created through unprecedented international cooperation. The Admiral walked briskly through sliding doors into the main control room. Dozens of scientists and military personnel worked at advanced stations. The room hummed with energy. "Status report," he demanded. Dr. Yunji looked up from her console. "Phoenix Shield is at 89% readiness. Admiral, Talon Fleet is fully operational but untested in actual combat." Admiral Minho nodded grimly. "And Project Lighthouse, ready to deploy, sir." For 30 years, the nations of Earth had secretly pooled their resources and best minds to develop technology that might one day protect humanity from exactly this scenario. Most of the world's population had no idea this place existed. Even most government leaders were told only portions of the truth. Admiral Minho quietly activated Earth's experimental defense systems, technology that had been developed in secret for decades. He knew these systems might not be enough to defeat the aliens, but they might buy time. Time for diplomacy. Time for humanity to find another way. "Begin full activation sequence," he ordered. "But maintain stealth protocols. We reveal nothing until absolutely necessary." Around him, the command center sprang into even greater activity. Hidden satellites throughout the solar system powered up advanced sensors. Concealed bases on the Moon and Mars went on alert. Quantum communication networks activated, allowing Earth's hidden defenses to coordinate without detection. "Sir," said his communications officer, "the UN Security Council is requesting your presence via secure link." "Put them through to my office," Minho replied, "and continue preparations. If these aliens think we'll just roll over and die, they've much to learn about humans." As day turned to night across the planet, billions of people looked up at the alien ships with fear. Parents held their children close. Lovers made promises. Some prayed. Others prepared to fight. Humanity had faced many threats throughout its history, but never one like this. In government offices, military bases, and secret facilities, desperate plans formed. 72 hours to find a way to survive. 72 hours to decide. Surrender or resist. And in his flagship above Earth, High Commander Tejo watched with cold confidence, certain of his victory, unaware that humanity had a few surprises of its own. As the deadline approached, global debates raged about humanity's response. In homes, cafes, and online forums, people argued about whether to fight or surrender. Some prepared for the end, while others refused to give up hope. The United Nations had become the center of Earth's resistance. Leaders from every nation gathered there day and night. They knew the fate of all humanity rested on their decisions. General Wujin pounded his fist on the conference table. "We must strike first. Use everything we have." "And then what?" asked the representative from Brazil. "Their ships would still be there, and we would have wasted our only weapons." "Better to die fighting than live as slaves," muttered another military leader. The debates continued for hours, going in circles. Everyone was tired, scared, and running out of time. 48 hours had already passed since the aliens' ultimatum. Dr. Ju Park had hardly slept. She worked with a team of linguists, mathematicians, and computer scientists, analyzing every aspect of the alien communications. They studied the original message over and over, looking for any information that might help. Late in the night, she noticed something strange. She checked her findings 3 times before rushing to the emergency council. "I need to speak to the leadership immediately," she told the guards outside the main chamber. Her hair was messy, her eyes red from lack of sleep, but her voice was steady and urgent. Inside, President Haijin was meeting with 20 world leaders. They looked up as Dr. Park entered. "You have something?" asked President Haijin. Dr. Park nodded and displayed her findings on the main screen. "There are subtle inconsistencies in their translation matrix," she explained. "Look here and here." She pointed to patterns in the data. What does it mean? Asked the German Chancellor. They're not as perfect as they want us to think, Dr. Park said. They've made mistakes in understanding certain concepts. And more importantly, the messages contain slight variations depending on which ship sent them. She pulled up another screen showing the alien fleet movements. See how these groups maintain distance from each other, and how communications between these sections are heavily encrypted. I believe they have internal divisions. They're not as united as they appear. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. You're saying we might exploit these divisions? Asked President Hygen. Dr. Park nodded. If we can create confusion or mistrust among them, it might buy us time. Admiral Minho, who had joined via secure link from the Deepwater complex, spoke up. Our hidden defenses are ready, but I don't recommend revealing them yet. If we show our hand too early, they'll adjust their strategy. President Hygen stood up and walked slowly around the table. She was a former professor of international relations before entering politics. Her analytical mind was what humanity needed now. A direct military confrontation would be suicide, she said finally, but psychological warfare might work. These aliens think they understand us, but they don't. They expect either surrender or a conventional attack. What do you propose? Asked the French president. Something unexpected, she replied. Something that will confuse them, make them second-guess their assumptions about us. For the next 12 hours, leaders and experts debated various responses. Some suggested elaborate deceptions. Others wanted to send complex diplomatic messages. The clock kept ticking. In a moment of frustration, a young aide whispered to his colleague, "Maybe we should just tell them to watch and learn." Dr. Park overheard this and froze. "Say that again," she demanded. The aide looked startled. "I just said maybe we should tell them to watch and learn, to observe us before judging." Dr. Park's eyes widened. She turned to President Hygen. "That's it. That's our response." "What is?" asked the president. "One word," Dr. Park said. "Observe. Nothing more." A single word. The British Prime Minister looked skeptical. "How would that help us?" Dr. Park explained eagerly. "From my analysis, the hegemony is highly hierarchical and protocol-driven. They expect clear responses that fit into their understanding of conflict resolution. A response this ambiguous would create confusion in their ranks. It could be interpreted multiple ways," added Admiral Minho, understanding immediately. "As a warning, a challenge, or even a philosophical statement." "Exactly," Dr. Park said. "And based on the divisions we've detected, different factions might interpret it differently, increasing their internal discord." President Hygen considered this carefully. "It buys us time without revealing our capabilities or intentions." After intense deliberation, humanity crafted its one-word response. The Security Council voted unanimously to approve it. For perhaps the first time in history, Earth spoke with one voice. With just 3 hours remaining before the deadline, preparations were made. The response would be transmitted simultaneously from multiple locations around the world, ensuring the aliens couldn't block it. President Hygen addressed the world briefly before the transmission. Her face appeared on screens globally. "People of Earth, we stand united in this moment of crisis. Our response to the hegemony will be sent shortly. Whatever comes next, remember that humanity has faced countless challenges throughout our history. We have always persevered. Trust that your leaders are working tirelessly for our survival." The transmission time arrived. In the UN Control Center, Dr. Park stood beside President Hygen. The room was completely silent. "Send it," the president ordered. When the communication channel opened, Earth's unified reply to the ultimatum was transmitted. "AudioBook." Just one word, sent in the same 147 languages the aliens had used. No explanation, no elaboration. Simply, "AudioBook." On the alien flagship, High Commander Tejo received the message with confusion. He read it again, then turned to his advisors. "What does this mean?" Is it a code? A mistake in transmission? His advisors looked equally puzzled. Some suggested it was a surrender. Others thought it might be defiance. Still others worried it was some kind of trap. Scan for weapons activations, Tahoe ordered. Monitor all Earth communications. I want to know what they're planning. As confusion spread through the alien fleet, humanity waited. In the Deepwater complex, Admiral Minho watched alien communications spike dramatically. In the UN building, Dr. Park monitored their reactions with growing hope. It's working, she whispered. They don't know what to make of it. President Hygen nodded solemnly. Now we see if we've bought ourselves enough time. The deadline passed, but the alien bombardment didn't begin. Instead, the massive ships remained in position, their commanders trying desperately to decipher humanity's cryptic message. Earth had taken its first step in a dangerous game of interstellar psychology. The question now was, what would happen next? Aboard the flagship, High Commander Tahoe stared at the message in confusion. The single word glowed on his command screen, AudioBook. He read it again and again, as if repetition might reveal its meaning. What does this mean? Is it a code? He finally asked, looking around at his senior officers. None would meet his eyes directly. No one wanted to be the first to offer an interpretation that might be wrong. Commander Donghae finally spoke. Perhaps it is their way of surrendering, sir. They'd wish us to observe their compliance. Or, countered Strategic Officer Yuna, they are challenging us to observe them before we act. A show of confidence. Tahoe's fingers tapped nervously on his armrest. In 17 planetary conquests, he had never received such an ambiguous response. Protocols dictated clear replies: surrender, negotiation, or defiance. This fit none of those categories. Contact the other fleet commanders, he ordered. I want their analysis immediately. Within the hour, the Leadership Council of the Hegemony Fleet gathered via holographic projection in Tahoe's war room. 20 alien commanders, each representing different ships and factions within the hegemony, appeared around the circular table. You've all received the human response, Tahoe began. I require your interpretations. The hegemony leadership fragmented over how to interpret humanity's cryptic response. Fleet Commander Jawan, a veteran of dozens of campaigns, spoke first. It's obviously a stalling tactic, he growled. They seek to delay while preparing their defenses. We should attack immediately. I disagree, said Commander Minji, her feathered crest rising in agitation. My cultural specialists believe this is a formal acceptance of our terms. In some human cultures, to observe means to comply with laws or regulations. Your specialists are wrong, countered Commander Sungo. My analysts think it's a warning. They're telling us to observe them, to watch what they're capable of. It suggests hidden strength. The debate grew heated. Old rivalries between hegemony factions resurfaced. Tahoe watched as his united front crumbled into arguing factions. Some believed it was a surrender, others suspected a trap. Some wanted immediate attack, others counseled caution. Enough, Tahoe finally shouted, silencing the room. This division serves the human's purpose, whatever it may be. We will resolve this simply. Demand clarification immediately. Communications Officer Jinwoo bowed slightly. Transmission ready, Commander. Tahoe nodded. Tell them we require clarification of their response within 1 hour, or we will consider it a rejection of our terms. The message was sent to Earth through all available channels. The commanders waited, expecting an immediate reply. Minutes passed, then half an hour, then the full hour. Earth maintained complete radio silence. No response on any frequency, Commander, reported Jinwoo, tension evident in his voice. Scan their militaries. Are they preparing to attack? Tahoe demanded. No unusual movements detected, said the sensor officer. Their armed forces remain at high alert, but have taken no offensive positions. Tahoe felt sweat on his brow, a rare occurrence for his species. This was not proceeding according to any invasion protocol. The humans were not following the expected script. Send another demand. Double the signal strength. Again, silence was the only reply. As word spread throughout the fleet, paranoia began to take root. Ship captains ordered extra scans of Earth's surface and surrounding space. Weapons officers kept their fingers near firing controls. Some crews began to whisper about Earth's strange response and what it might mean. They say humans are unpredictable, one junior officer told his colleagues in the mess hall. Maybe they have weapons we cannot detect. I heard they once destroyed their own cities to win wars, said another. What kind of species does that? Similar conversations happened across hundreds of ships. The single word observe had become a psychological weapon, causing the invaders to second-guess their every move. Tahoe could feel his controls slipping as hours passed with no further communication from Earth. The deadline has expired. Commander Sungo reminded everyone during the next leadership meeting. We should begin the attack as promised. And if that's what they're expecting? Asked Commander Minji. What if they have some countermeasure ready the moment we fire? Tahoe paced the bridge, his usual confidence shaken. Scanned everything again. I want to know if there's anything at all, we've missed. Meanwhile, on Earth, Dr. Park worked tirelessly to understand the aliens' cultural framework. She had not left the United Nations building in days. Her office walls were covered with analysis charts and alien communication patterns. A team of 20 specialists worked with her, monitoring every detectable signal from the hegemony fleet. Look at these energy spikes, she told President Hyjin, pointing to her screens. They're scanning us constantly, at higher and higher resolutions. They're looking for something. Have they found our hidden defenses? The president asked. Dr. Park shook her head. Admiral Minho reports all systems remain undetected. But that's not what interests me most. She pulled up a chart showing communication patterns between alien ships. Their internal communications have increased by 300%, and they're using much higher encryption between certain ship groups. What does that tell you? They're arguing, Dr. Park said with a small smile. Different factions are debating what to do. Our response has created uncertainty, and they don't handle uncertainty well. She brought up images captured by space telescopes showing the alien fleet. Notice how these ships have subtly adjusted their positions. They're maintaining slightly greater distances from ships of different factions. They don't trust each other, the president asked. They're hierarchical and rigid, Dr. Park reported. Ambiguity terrifies them. Their entire society is built on clear orders and protocols. Our response fits none of their expected patterns, so they're falling back on internal divisions that were already present. In the command bunker beneath the presidential residence, military leaders watched the alien fleet with growing hope. They should have attacked hours ago, General Wujin noted. Their own deadline has passed. They're scared, responded Admiral Minho via secure link. They expected either surrender or a futile counterattack. We gave them neither. President Hyjin considered this information carefully. How long can we maintain this standoff? Hard to say, Dr. Park admitted. Eventually, someone in their command might force a decision. But every hour gives us more time to analyze their weaknesses and prepare our defenses. Outside, people around the world watched the sky with a mixture of fear and cautious hope. The alien ships remained visible overhead, ominous reminders of the threat. But they had not attacked. News spread that Earth's response had confused the invaders. In secret facilities worldwide, scientists and engineers worked frantically to adapt any technology that might help defend the planet. Military units stayed on high alert. And in space, the hidden satellites of Project Lighthouse continued to gather information on the alien fleet. Aboard the flagship, Tahoe called an emergency meeting of his highest-ranking officers. This cannot continue, he stated flatly. The humans mock us with their silence. Prepare the demonstration weapon. We will destroy one of their smaller cities as planned. That will show them we are serious. Weapons officer Shunho hesitated. Sir, without knowing what their observed message means, is this wise? What if they're baiting us into revealing our capabilities? Tahoe slammed his fist on the table. I will not be paralyzed by a single word. The attack will proceed in 6 hours. Choose a target. As the aliens prepared their demonstration, they remained unaware of how thoroughly their psychological advantage had been undermined. Their greatest weapon, fear, had been turned against them by a single word and calculated silence. The next move in this dangerous game would be theirs. But for the first time since they arrived, the hegemony no longer fully controlled the situation. Uncertainty had become Earth's strongest shield. When the 72-hour deadline expired, High Commander Tahoe gave the order to prepare the demonstration strike. A target had been selected, a small coastal city in Australia with a population of about 100,000 people. The attack would show humans the price of their defiance. Weapon charging at 60%, reported Weapons Officer Chunno. Full power in 3 minutes. Tahoe stood tall on his command platform, his confidence returning. Soon the humans would understand their mistake. Their cryptic message would not save them. Sir, called the sensor officer suddenly. Energy signatures activating around Earth. What? Show me, Tahoe demanded. The main view screen displayed a tactical map of Earth's orbit. Dozens of small points of light were appearing all around the planet, objects that had been invisible until now. Earth activated a dormant network of defensive satellites. These had been hidden using advanced stealth technology, undetectable until they powered up. They had been placed in orbit years ago, disguised as ordinary communications satellites or space debris. Analysis of the satellites, Tahoe demanded. Unknown technology, his science officer replied, voice shaking slightly. They appeared to be generating some kind of energy field. Rather than attacking, the satellites merely projected a global shield. A thin, shimmering barrier began to form around Earth, visible even from the ground as a faint blue glow in the sky. Can our weapons penetrate it? Tahoe asked. Unknown, Commander. We've never seen this type of shielding before. On Earth, Admiral Minho stood in the control center of the Deepwater complex. Around him, technicians monitored the shield deployment with tense concentration. Phoenix shield at full power, reported Dr. Yunji. All sectors operational. Admiral Minho nodded. And the Talon fleet? Ready for launch, Admiral. Minho took a deep breath. Execute Phase 2. Across Earth, hidden facilities activated. In the deepest parts of the oceans, massive bay doors opened in the seafloor. In remote mountain ranges, entire hillsides slid away. On the far side of the moon, concealed bases powered up. Admiral Minho revealed Earth's hidden fleet of advanced spacecraft. They rose from oceanic bases and lunar outposts, sleek vessels unlike anything humans had publicly acknowledged possessing. They were the product of reversed-engineered alien technology from crashed scout ships over the decades, combined with humanity's own innovation. The ships were not as large or numerous as the hegemony fleet, but they were impressive nonetheless. They formed a defensive perimeter around Earth, but made no aggressive moves. In the hegemony flagship, chaos erupted. Where did these vessels come from? Tahoe shouted. How did we miss them in our scans? They have advanced stealth technology, replied his science officer, and many were hidden deep underwater or on the far side of their moon. Commander Sunwoo, Tahoe's second-in-command, studied the tactical display with growing concern. Their formations are purely defensive, their positioning to intercept attacks, not to strike first. Throughout the alien fleet, similar scenes of confusion played out. Commanders who had been certain of an easy victory now faced an unexpected development. The humans had hidden capabilities far beyond what the hegemony had believed possible. Then, after days of silence, Earth finally broadcast a message. It went to every ship in the hegemony fleet simultaneously. People of the Galactic hegemony, came the voice of President Hygen, calm and measured. You asked for our surrender. We replied, observe. Now, we invite you to do exactly that. The broadcast continued with historical accounts of human perseverance against overwhelming odds, from ancient sieges to modern resistance movements. It showed the defense of Thermopylae, where a small force held off a vast army. It displayed footage from world wars, where nations fought on despite terrible losses. It showed communities rebuilding after natural disasters. Throughout our history, President Hygen continued, humanity has faced extinction many times. We have endured ice ages with stone tools. We have survived plagues that killed millions. We have weathered conflicts that threatened to end our civilization. Each time, we adapted. Each time, we survived. The message was not a threat. It contained no ultimatum. It simply showed, again and again, humanity's unwillingness to surrender even in the face of overwhelming odds. We could have taken a more aggressive stance, the president concluded. We chose not to. We invite you to observe who we really are, and to reconsider whether conquest is your only option. The broadcast ended, leaving the hegemony fleet in stunned silence. On the flagship bridge, Tahoe replayed the message, looking for hidden threats or deception. He found none, only the uncomfortable truth that he had severely underestimated this species. Confusion rippled through the hegemony fleet. Ship captains requested new orders. Sensor crews worked frantically to assess Earth's true military capabilities. Weapons remained charged but had not fired. They could have attacked when we were vulnerable, said Tahoe's second-in-command, Sunwoo. During our initial approach, before we were fully alert. Why didn't they? Tahoe stared at the tactical display, watching Earth's ships maintain their defensive positions. The realization dawned on him slowly, then all at once. Because, Tahoe realized, they wanted us to observe them first. He sank into his command chair, mind racing with implications. The humans had known about the hegemony longer than anyone suspected. They had prepared in secret, developing technologies that rivaled some of the hegemony's own. Yet they had not attacked. Even now, with their defenses revealed, they made no aggressive moves. Cancel the demonstration strike, Tahoe ordered quietly. Sir, Weapons Officer Chunho looked startled. Cancel it, Tahoe repeated more firmly. And send a message to the human leadership. Request a dialogue. Word spread quickly through the alien fleet. The planned attack had been called off. Instead of bombardment, the High Commander was seeking communication with the humans. On Earth, people gathered in streets and homes, watching the alien ships through telescopes and on video feeds. The expected attack had not come. Instead, the hegemony fleet remained in position, weapons powered down. In the UN headquarters, Dr. Park received the alien transmission request. They want to talk, she told President Hygen, her voice betraying a mixture of relief and cautious optimism. Good, the president replied. That was the goal of all this, to make them see us as worthy of conversation rather than conquest. Admiral Minho's voice came through on the secure channel. Our ships will maintain defensive positions, but this is a positive development. Yes, agreed the president. Perhaps now we can show them that there are alternatives to conquest. That cooperation might benefit both our peoples more than conflict. As preparations began for the first real dialogue between humanity and the galactic hegemony, people around the world continued to watch the skies. The alien ships were still there, still powerful, and potentially deadly. But something had changed. A single word had created doubt. A demonstration of resolve had created respect. The path ahead remained uncertain, but humanity had won its first victory, not through superior firepower, but through psychology and patience. They had made the hegemony observe, and in observing, begin to understand. The alien fleet withdrew to a safe distance 3 days after the revelation of Earth's defenses. The massive ships moved back to positions near the moon, still visible from Earth, but no longer directly overhead. People watched with mixed feelings of relief and uncertainty as the dark shadows left their skies. High Commander Tahoe made his decision after long discussions with his officers. The hegemony had conquered 17 worlds before Earth, and none had responded like this. Their usual tactics of intimidation had failed. Their technological advantage was smaller than expected, and most importantly, the humans had shown restraint when they could have attacked. Pull back to secondary positions. Tahoe ordered his fleet. Maintain defensive readiness, but power down main weapons. As the ships retreated, Tahoe prepared for something he had never done before: admit a mistake. He personally requested formal diplomatic talks, the demand for surrender completely abandoned. The first meeting took place on a neutral platform, a large space station that the humans launched into orbit specifically for this purpose. It was a simple structure, but building it in just 2 weeks impressed the aliens with human engineering abilities. Tahoe arrived with a small delegation. He wore his formal uniform, but had removed most of his military decorations as a gesture of respect. When he entered the conference room, President Hyjin and Dr. Park were waiting. "Thank you for agreeing to meet," President Hyjin said. Tahoe bowed slightly. "We misunderstood your species," he admitted. "Our intelligence was incomplete." Dr. Park studied the alien commander carefully. As Earth's foremost expert on the aliens, she had been chosen to lead the negotiation team. She wore a simple blue suit and carried only a small tablet. "Understanding takes time," she replied, "and observation." Tahoe acknowledged this with a small smile. "Your response was unexpected. In 17 conquests, no species has ever replied with a single word. Yet that word accomplished what weapons could not," President Hyjin noted. The negotiations lasted for weeks. They were difficult at times. Some hegemony factions still favored aggressive action. Some human nations wanted to use their hidden weapons to drive the aliens away completely. But cooler heads prevailed on both sides. Dr. Park worked long hours, learning the nuances of hegemony culture and politics. She discovered that the alien coalition was not as united as it appeared. Many member species had joined through coercion rather than choice. Some secretly resented the dominant factions. During a tense session about Earth's status, Dr. Park stood firm against Tahoe's proposal of protected alliance status, which would have placed Earth under hegemony oversight. "Earth will join the galactic community as equals, not subjects," she stated firmly. "We have demonstrated our capability to defend ourselves. We have shown our willingness to communicate rather than fight. These are the actions of a mature civilization." Tahoe considered her words carefully. "The Hegemony Council will not easily accept a new independent power." "Then perhaps," Dr. Park suggested, "the Council needs to observe more carefully how cooperation can benefit everyone more than conquest." This became the foundation of the final agreement. Earth would remain independent but would exchange technology, resources, and cultural knowledge with the hegemony. Humans would gain limited access to interstellar travel. And most importantly, Earth would serve as a neutral meeting ground for hegemony factions to resolve their own internal disputes. As news of the agreement spread throughout the galaxy, the story of Earth's response grew with each telling. The OB0V strategy became legendary among alien civilizations. Diplomats studied it. Military academies taught it. It was the species that had won its freedom not through superior firepower, but through unexpected wisdom. In the years that followed, Earth took advantage of its unique position. While the major hegemony factions maintained formal relations with human governments, Earth quietly formed alliances with minority factions within the hegemony. Species that had been conquered or marginalized found in humanity a willing listener and advocate. Dr. Park eventually became Earth's first ambassador to the Galactic Council. Her deep understanding of hegemony culture made her respected even by those who had initially supported the invasion. Under her guidance, humanity's unique approach to conflict resolution became a valuable diplomatic asset throughout the galaxy. "Humans think differently," one alien diplomat remarked. "They see connections where we see only competition." Tahoe himself underwent a significant change. What began as reluctant respect for humanity grew into genuine admiration. After completing his report to the Hegemony Council, he requested assignment as permanent ambassador to Earth. a position usually considered beneath someone of his rank. His request was granted, more out of curiosity than approval. 1 year after the first contact, President Haijin hosted a small private dinner in the rebuilt United Nations headquarters. The guests included key figures from both sides who had worked on the peace agreement. Dr. Park was there, as was Admiral Minho. Tahoe represented the hegemony, now wearing diplomatic rather than military insignia. After dinner, President Haijin raised a glass. To observation, she toasted, and to peace built on understanding, not fear. Tahoe raised his glass in return. And to the species that taught the stars to look more carefully, he replied. Later that evening, as they stood on a balcony looking up at the night sky, Dr. Park asked Tahoe a question that had bothered her for months. If we hadn't responded as we did, if we had surrendered or attacked, what would have happened? Tahoe was quiet for a long moment. 17 worlds before yours gave those responses. None remained truly independent. And now? She asked. Now many of those worlds are watching Earth, learning. Some are beginning to speak of their own independence. Will there be conflict? Dr. Park worried. Perhaps, Tahoe admitted. Change rarely comes peacefully, but it can come with less bloodshed than before. He looked down at the city lights below. Some in the hegemony fear this change. Others welcome it. Your single word started something that may reshape our entire civilization. As they spoke, far above them, ships from various worlds moved through Earth's busy orbital lanes. Trade vessels, diplomatic shuttles, and cultural exchange missions came and went. Earth had become a crossroads for a galaxy in transition. Humanity had taken its first steps into a much larger universe. The challenges ahead were many, but they faced them with the same wisdom that had saved them from conquest, the wisdom to observe before acting, to understand before judging, and to find strength and patience. The stars had come to Earth with threats of destruction. They had stayed to learn. And in that learning, both humanity and the galaxy were forever changed. The end.